It was the beginning of my sophomore year, and I had just moved into a new house with some old friends from high school. I had always preferred living off campus, away from the noise of dorm life, and this place was perfect. It was an old, 2-story house tucked away on the edge of a dense forest. The rent was cheap, and the previous tenants had left it in decent condition, so it seemed like a no-brainer. The first few days were pretty uneventful. I unpacked my stuff, settled in, and hung out with my friends, exploring the town and getting ready for the school year. But something felt off. It was hard to explain at first, just a strange energy in the house, like something wasn't quite right. I brushed it off, assuming it was just nerves about starting a new year. Then came that first night. It was a Friday, and my roommates and I were sitting in the living room, playing video games and joking around, trying to enjoy the weekend. Around midnight, I felt a sudden chill in the room. I glanced around, but no one else seemed to notice. The temperature seemed to drop rapidly, and I could see my breath in the air. "Is it getting cold in here? Or am I losing it?" I asked, trying to lighten the mood. One of my roommates, Kyle, shivered. "Yeah, it's a little chilly. Maybe we should turn on the heat or something." I shrugged, but I wasn't really in the mood to argue. We decided to head to bed soon after. I didn't think much of the cold, assuming it was just a draft in the house. But that night, as I lay in bed trying to sleep, I heard it. At first, it was faint, just a soft rustling sound, like the wind blowing through the trees outside. But it wasn't the wind. It was coming from the hallway. I could hear soft, slow footsteps, like someone was pacing back and forth. I tried to ignore it, thinking it was one of my roommates up for a late-night snack. But the footsteps didn't stop. They kept going, dragging on, as if whoever it was couldn't decide where they wanted to go. The more I listened, the more the footsteps seemed to get closer to my door. Then, I heard a soft knock. I froze, staring at the door. It wasn't loud, but it was enough to send a chill down my spine. It was almost like someone was testing to see if I was awake. My heart began to race. I told myself it was nothing. Maybe one of my roommates needed something, or it was just my mind playing tricks on me. But then, the door slowly creaked open. I could barely make out the silhouette of a person standing there, the dim light from the hallway casting long shadows across the room. My mind raced, and I immediately tried to call out, but no sound came from my throat. It was like I had lost the ability to speak. The figure stood there for what felt like an eternity, and then, as quickly as it had opened, the door slammed shut. I jumped up, my heart pounding in my chest. I rushed over to the door and threw it open, but there was nothing. The hallway was empty and the house was eerily silent once again. I stumbled back to my bed, unsure of what had just happened. Was it one of my roommates playing a prank on me? Maybe I was just imagining things. The next morning, I asked my roommates if any of them had been up during the night. They all said no. I felt a strange sense of dread growing inside me, but I didn't want to sound paranoid. Maybe I was just tired. That night, I decided to stay up late and keep watch. I wanted to make sure I wasn't just overthinking things. I sat in the living room, the only light coming from the flickering TV screen, and waited. As the hours passed, I started to feel drowsy. I was just about to nod off when I heard it again. The same footsteps, soft but deliberate. I could feel my heart rate pick up, and my body went rigid. This time I knew I wasn't imagining it. Someone, or something, was walking through the house. I grabbed a baseball bat I kept in the corner of the room and tiptoed down the hallway, trying to be as quiet as possible. The footsteps were getting closer, closer to the stairs that led down to the basement. I could hear my breath coming in short, shallow gasps as I reached the top of the stairs. I peered over the banister, expecting to see something. Someone. But there was nothing. The house was silent. Then, I heard a voice. It was soft, barely audible, but I could make out the words. "Come closer." I whipped my head around, trying to locate the source of the voice. There was no one there. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up as I backed away from the stairs, my grip tightening on the bat. Suddenly, the floorboards creaked behind me. I spun around, and to my horror, standing at the end of the hallway was a figure. It wasn't one of my roommates. It was a tall, gaunt man with hollow, empty eyes. His face was pale, almost sickly, and his long, bony fingers reached out toward me. I couldn't move. I couldn't speak. I was frozen in place, staring at the thing in front of me. It opened its mouth, but no sound came out. Just an empty, chilling silence. Then, with a sickening grin, the figure slowly stepped back and vanished into the shadows. The house fell silent once again, but I could still feel its presence, like it was watching me from somewhere in the darkness. The next day, I told my roommates what had happened, but they didn't believe me. They thought I was just stressed out or that I had imagined the whole thing. But I knew what I had seen. There was something in the house, something that didn't belong there. Over the next few days, strange things kept happening. I would hear footsteps in the hall when no one was there. I'd find doors that I had locked wide open. And at night, I would wake up to the feeling of eyes watching me from the corner of the room. Then came the whispers. It was the middle of the night, and I had just woken up from a deep sleep. I was lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, when I heard it. Soft at first, like the rustling of leaves in the wind. But as I listened, the sound grew clearer. It wasn't the wind. It was words, hushed and barely discernible, but unmistakable. Leave. I froze, my body stiff with fear. I sat up, scanning the room. There was no one there, but the whispers continued, now louder and more insistent. Get out. I didn't know what to do. I wasn't sure if I should scream or run or just pretend it was all in my head. I was scared, paralyzed, as the whispers grew more frantic. My room felt colder, like the air had turned to ice. Suddenly, the whispers stopped. The room went completely silent. I held my breath, waiting for something else to happen, but nothing did. For the next few days, I couldn't sleep. I felt like something was always watching me, lurking in the shadows just out of sight. I couldn't shake the feeling that the house was alive and hungry. One night, after yet another restless night, I woke up to find my bedroom door wide open. I could hear my roommates downstairs laughing and talking. I was still half asleep, but I decided to close the door and try to sleep again. When I stepped into the hallway, I saw something that made my blood run cold. At the far end of the hallway, there was a figure standing there. It was tall, like the man I had seen before, but this time, there were no empty eyes. Instead, it had a twisted, grinning face, the skin stretched tight over its bones. Its mouth was wide open, exposing rows of jagged, broken teeth, and its hands were long, claw-like, reaching out as if it wanted to touch me. I couldn't move. I wanted to scream, but no sound came from my mouth. I was trapped in place, staring at the thing as it began to inch closer. Suddenly, the house shook. The lights flickered, and the thing vanished. I didn't stick around to find out what else was going to happen. I grabbed my things and ran. I didn't care where I went, just as long as it was away from that house. I never went back. I don't know what happened to my roommates. I don't know if they ever experienced the things I did, but every now and then, I hear the whispers in my mind, reminding me of the eyes in the forest.